control other countries through this kind of slow infiltration, and that nation states aren't really what they used to be because of the flow of money and power. And the same with Charisse. I mean, she's so delicious, and that role, like, she's just like a purring cat at all times. And what I love about the characters is I think each of them has their own moral code and is adhering to it. You know, like Charisse is
Mhm.
a fantastic villain, in part because she's not wrong. She's 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 trying to do something for humanity and weighing the pros and cons. It's just that her moral calculus is very different to, say, Flynn's.
Yes.
And then, of course, Lobier is just this iconic badass who, I mean, I can't wait to
She
see
is
what
so
happens.
great.
I mean, she's like the chess master who's like 4 steps ahead of everybody else at all time. But I think that Chloë and Flynn is going to be able to handle anything that's thrown her way.
Well, that's a great segue because I want to bring in Chloë next too. Is here on the Twitter account for the Peripheral. Chloë, if you want to unmute yourself and say hi.
Hello, hello.
Hello, thank you for joining us. It's so great to have you.
Yeah, of course.
So
Thank you for having me.
yeah, yeah. So you play Flynne Fisher, who of course is the heroine of the show, and
Mm.
as Lisa was just saying, she is up against these very powerful characters. Each of them has their own moral calculus and their own kind of way of seeing the world. So, what do you like about Flynn? How do you relate to her, and what were you trying to bring out about her?
I mean, there's a multitude of things that I really fell in love with, just from reading William Gibson's novel, of course. And when we first had, I remember it was, oh my gosh, it must have been 2 plus. I had my meeting with Lisa and Jonah, and we kind of sat down and just talked about all the things that we really loved about Flynn. And one thing that I found um, just really interesting about her, about a female lead, was that one thing is that, no matter what situation she really gets herself into, she is an inherently really good person, in the sense she really can trust her gut. And she, no matter what, is there to fight for Clanton and to fight for her mother and to fight for her brother. And kind of no matter how far we go into, what can feel very daunting about the future, very doomsday, we can always kind of boomerang back around to her and Burton, and her mother, and we know why they're doing what they're doing, so we always have someone to trust. And I kind of just really, wanted to dig into that, and I think it was wonderful creating with everyone that we were able to work with on the show, because they really trusted us as actors to, dig our teeth in, and to really excavate the character, in all the little intricacies that we wanted to.
And I don't know if you can give me a bit of a preview here, or if this is like giving too much away. But like, what is the deal between Flynn and Wilf Netherton? They seem to have this almost romance going, and then it stops. Like, are we going to see something more happening between those two?
I think that is something that, I don't want to give too much away, but I feel like with season 2, I really hope we are able to do a season 2. There's so much more that we can kind of delve into between that relationship between Wilf and Flynn in the future. And I think it's really one of those situations where she's able to have herself be seen as the woman that she wants to be seen as. When you grow up in a small town, everyone always remembers you as little Flynn, you know what I mean? As you at 12 years old when you were all in school together. But when she goes to future London and she meets Wilf as exactly the woman that she wants to meet him as. And so there's something really beautiful about that, of being seen as the Flynne Fisher that she wants to be and portray within herself.
Yeah.
So I'm excited to kind of see how that would play out, over season 2, to be honest.
There's something also about Flynn that it feels to me like she has this kind of amazing self-knowledge, because there's this moment, I don't remember which episode it's in, where I think maybe it's Lev Zubov is trying to pressure her to do something, and she just like, no, I hold the cards. I'm going to make things happen at my pace, and she knows what power she knows what power she wields, which is kind of remarkable. I think that's like, it feels like that speaks to what you were saying about just knowing where she stands and pushing for it.
100%. I think she really has like a true north. There's something about Flynn that no matter what she's faced with, she's able to really calm herself and to be able to hone in on her intuition and exactly what she wants to get across. And I do think, that does play hand in hand with her gamer sensibilities and the fact that when you game, your whole life, you're constantly solving puzzles and you're constantly having to work against your nervous system to be able to calm yourself down to understand what you need to achieve to finish this level. And when you approach life like that, it honestly does give you such an advantage and such a mental dexterity edge that she has full control over her mind and her body and exactly what she wants to get across. And then when you put her obviously in a robot body in 2099, she then has a physical edge to it where she's able to actually accomplish what she wants to accomplish, both physically and mentally, which is really an exciting, little powder keg.
Yeah, you sound like you speak from experience. Are you a gamer?
I am very much so a gamer. It's funny. I just recently got like a custom PC, and I have been leveling up my gaming, and it has been very, very fun for me. And I just bought a little PC laptop to bring with me because I'm on my way to Brazil. I'm on the way to the airport to go to Brazil with Lisa actually soon for Brazilian Comic-Con, and I brought my my PC laptop to be able to to game while I'm there. So I'm a little bit obsessed.
Okay, wonderful.
Are we going to play each other, Chloe? Because I feel like we could kill some time in Brazil when we're jet lagged that way.
I'm 100% ready. I actually brought a secondary controller, so I'm ready to go if you're down to play some COD.
What game are you going to play?
Well, definitely Modern Warfare 2, for sure.
Well, obviously,
we gotta get
after this.
some Warzone. Yeah.
All right, we're still waiting for William Gibson to come back on. I have a bunch of questions for him, but for now, let us continue. There's an interesting thing. So when Bill wrote the book, I read an interview with him where he said that he very deliberately didn't specify where Clanton was or where the town was where Flynne lives, Flynne Burton. He left it vague because I think he wanted to be a non-specified part of the U.S. But you made the decision, Lisa, I guess it was you probably, to situate it in a specific place. I think a fictional town, but in North Carolina, and in the Blue Ridge Mountains in Appalachia. And a friend of mine said that was an interesting choice because they felt like that part of the country doesn't get a lot of screen time. It doesn't get a lot of heroes. It's sort of mainly known as, it gets painted as a fairly hopeless part of the country. Was there a reason why you chose North Carolina, and what were you thinking about that?
I think there was, something about the way the community and the dialogue in Gibson's book that definitely gave it a sort of Southern kind of angle to it. It just felt organic to that. And Gibson, I believe he spent some of his youth in the South. Correct me if I'm wrong, Vincenzo.
He grew up there.
Yeah, he grew up there, and so it felt like such an intimate novel for Gibson. And I think Scott Smith also has experience in the South, and as you can tell by Chloe's incredible accent, which I didn't even know she had, we've got ourselves a Southern girl there too. But I think, thematically for me, there's this weird thing where science fiction so much has been the purview of, a metropolis meeting another metropolis in the future, this kind of very like cosmopolitan urban vibe. And I mean, most of us aren't from major metropolises, and there's this idea of what does it really mean? What kind of wish fulfillment would you see for a regular person? Like, I grew up in the suburbs in New Jersey, and her kind of community resonated with me more and felt more familiar to me than a lot of the other starting points for these science fiction odysseys. And I think that was really an important thing. We wanted to reach out to a more universal audience to feel really relatable in that way. And I think the other thing, to quote Gibson, who, again, he's probably going to be here and be like, you've misquoted me, but I'm trying, William. The future's already here. It's just unevenly distributed, right? So in a funny way, when the farther away you are from like the major metropolitan cities, like the more in the past you are, even in the same moment, right? So the juxtaposition between now and later is not necessarily equal. There's a sort of different delta in the timeline there. And so playing with that too, and the kind of inequality of wealth distribution and social access is also very much a part of this story. The story of a kind of every man and every woman trying to confront forces that seem much greater than them in their own timeline and one in the future.
Right. Well, I know that William Gibson is here. He's here as a listener. William, if you can hear me, please find the button at the bottom of the app that says "Request to Speak" and click it, and then we can operate your mic.
And I just texted it to him as well. So, Bill, if you can hear me, check your phone.
Yeah. This is the great irony of sci-fi writers. They with complete
right.
prophetic accuracy, but very hard to get on Twitter Live.
And this is Wired, and we should have this figured out, but apparently we don't. Okay.
On top, I mean that I'm on the Peripheral account because apparently I'm underage. So I got locked out of my own account on Twitter. Yeah. They said I'm under 13, and so I got locked out of my Twitter.
Okay, so like past you is occupying future you or present you.
Yeah.
This is all very this is very, very peripheral. Okay. Meanwhile, so until we get William on, Lisa, so one of the things that I think unites you, and I'm waiting for him to come on so he can tell me whether to call him William or Bill. But anyway, one of the things that unites you and Bill is that you're both expert world builders. Obviously, you worked on Westworld. What was most exciting, most challenging, most interesting about bringing these two worlds of 2030s Appalachia and 2100 London to life for this show?
The thing that was most exciting was working with this cast of characters, and this very much, Westworld was very much an examination of humanity through a sort of distanced sci-fi eye, through the eye of an artificial intelligence, and in that way you can learn a lot about from humanity from examining it from outside of humanity. But the Peripheral is this very different study of humanity from the gaze of itself. There's such human characters that Gibson has created here. That's wonderful. Is he on? Ooh, what? On? I'm sorry.
He should be, but like. Well,
I know
anyway,
he's gonna be like, Lisa, that's wrong. But William Gibson is just this absolute icon, and the way that he crafts his novels is so immersive that it's almost like, I talked about this before, and Chloë could speak better to this as our resident gamer. But it is like, it's at least how I feel when I start a game. Somebody hands you the controls, and you're immersed in this world, and there's everything around you in 360 is completely rendered, completely believable, and completely kinetic. And you have to find your footing immediately, or you're going to get like shot or eaten by a demon or whatever game you're playing. And Gibson's world is the same way. He doesn't take time to explain stuff to you. He just creates a full universe, transports you there, and says, figure it out, learn. And what Vincenzo's managed to do is take this epic, beautiful world where everything from the kind of Roomba to the skyscrapers has been reimagined using the most scientific form of extrapolation, I think, in terms of his creative process. And Vincenzo has brought it to life in this beautiful way. So it's just been a pleasure to work with all these mad, brilliant folks.
Vincenzo, can you step in on this? Like, what was most interesting for you about trying to create this, particularly the world of future London?
Well, oddly, I feel more comfortable in future London. I was afraid of Clanton because I was afraid I wouldn't be authentic. And I don't,
interesting.
I've been to the southeastern United States a little bit, but not enough. And I would, whereas future London to me, like if you said, where do you want to live? I go, absolutely future London. I'd just be more comfortable there. So that was an area that, although it was kind of the more ambitious design aspect, I actually was more fearful of Clanton. And I was also fearful as a director of Clanton and kind of, being part of the design team to create that space, because unlike most time travel stories, this one is not set in the present. There is no present. Most time travel stories begin somewhere that's familiar, and then you leap off into the future or the past or wherever, but you ground the audience in a place that is familiar with them before taking these expansive journeys. This one has two futures, and the Clanton future is a near future. So it is the more familiar of the two, but it is a future. It's not exactly our time, and I was nervous, especially in the sort of context of a TV show where you've got to like grab people by the lapels and drag them into the screen and keep their attention and connect with them immediately, that it might be confusing or off-putting to put them into a world that is sort of their world, but not quite. And it just might throw them off in that very first step. So that was the world that I was actually the most concerned about, and spend quite a bit of time with Lisa and with Jonah and Scott and everybody, and Jan Rolfs, our designer, trying to posit exactly like how much futurism is in that world. And it really is an embodiment of the Gibson quote that Lisa gave you, where you see that, yes, future technology exists in this place, but it's also a very backward place. Like it could be 100 years ago, in some respects. So that was actually in a way, the more challenging of the one of the two. But it was fun. All of it was fun.
All right, let's see if we can get William Gibson. I don't know if you're available. If you can unmute yourself, unmute yourself, and if not, I guess not. I don't know if this is a glitch in Twitter or a glitch in our setup, but maybe Vincenzo, if you have Bill's number, can you maybe just call him and put him on speakerphone? Would that work? All right. While you do that, let's go back to Chloë, because I'm curious what it's like acting a character who inhabits two very different worlds, and what are actually two different bodies. Like, although they're outwardly identical, you're in a robot body and you're in a human body. How did that require some sort of adjustment between those two environments?
Definitely. I think, Vincenzo, you can probably speak to this as well, but I remember when we first started filming, it was something that I really wanted to figure out how to make specifically waking up and powering down as a robot kind of different than what we've seen with other robots. And one way that I kind of thought about it was, there's like a little bit of when you like click power down on your computer, right? It goes through a little series of like flash, and then it powers down for you. And so I kind of wanted to like create this thing where, when she's unlinked, there's like the neural cutout happens, and her soul is gone, and then she closes her eyes, and then the AI turns on, and then it's like a more like a gradual, slow kind of thing. And I think it's something that I feel like usually it's kind of like a stark off and on, and I kind of wanted to be more gradual, which was kind of fun to play with. The physicality I really wanted to play with, especially where, when she's in Clanton, I just wanted her to feel physically like, her back might be hurting or her knees might be hurting or something like that. And then when she's in her robot, she's more erect and she's more, kind of pulled back in a way. And that physicality, I think, also really came hand in hand with Michelle Clapton, our incredible wardrobe designer, who really changed the shape of Flynne between Clanton and Future London. And we really wanted to feel like, almost like she felt like she was excavated from like her father's jacket that she wears in Clanton and the kind of baggy clothes that she hides behind. And all of a sudden she's thrust into this pulled back, the clothing is pulled back, and she's, really feels physically like a different person. So just like on paper of the physicality and stuff was a really big, a really exciting thing to jump into. And then mentally being between two worlds and kind of being the only person between these two worlds with effectively like two different casts. The Future London cast was pretty much completely separate than the Clanton cast. And it was really interesting going between those two worlds. And it honestly was a bit of a roadmap that we had to, keep reminding ourselves where we were, where we started, that shooting sequence or that scene. That way we kind of kept everything in. But it was a really interesting, I would say, puzzle pieces that connected together.
Yeah.
The funniest thing for me
go on, Lisa.
The funniest thing for me about that process, Chloë, is that it's this elegant, beautiful sigh of life that you do, and it's called crowning, which is so gross. All of you crowning.
So funny.
So wrong. Like, why would Scott do that to us? It's so apt and yet so wrong.
Correct.
But it's also really interesting like watching you as I've been a fan for so long, inhabit these two worlds and these two very different roles. Like when you were talking about going into Future London and kind of having a different identity with Wilf and having him be able to see you clearly as you are now. I mean, as a child actor who's done so much and grown up so much in the public eye, to me, it's just this really interesting thing where you're also announcing yourself with this really versatile adult performance as, you know, as somebody that is, you know, this is my identity, not the one that's been imposed upon me over time, you know, by other viewers.
No, I mean, thank you.
Oh, sorry, go on, Chloe.
No, I was just gonna say thank you for saying that. You know, it definitely. I think we've talked about this so much during all this press tour time when we've just been talking about the show so much, and the uncanny amount of parallels between Flynn and myself and my life and Flynn's life are honestly like kind of wild and mind blowing in ways. And I think there was so much that I could pour into Flynn at the time I shot this, and it was just this perfect. I don't know. It was this perfect kind of symbiotic experience where art begets life in a really interesting way, which just feels so peripherally. You know what I mean?
Is that an adjective now, peripherally?
For sure, peripherally.
So I can see on our separate Zoom call, I can see Vincenzo doing tech support with a preeminent science fiction writer of our age. So while he does that, I'm going to come back to Lisa. Can you talk at all to some of the design choices? This may be a Vincenzo question, but one of the things that struck me about Future London is how some bits of it are incredibly futuristic, like the robots, the Koids, I think, and then the walls that turn into screens that turn into windows. And then some of it is really retro. The taxis are exactly like modern day London taxis, except that they're self-driving. Do you know anything? Can you talk at all about how those design choices were made of how to make London feel both futuristic and recognizable?
Yes, of course. I mean, Vincenzo would also have so much to say on this, but there's some stuff that I worked with Vincenzo initially on Westworld, and that's when I fell in love with him. And some of the things that we practiced there kind of carried over in terms of a strategy for world creation. And that is that, you know, in a show where there are limited resources, you know, it's really about choosing where you're going to place your bets to create a world of this scope. And what we did find was that creating an entire world with, like, you know, CG or on a volume or something like that, at a certain point, no matter how great the tech is, you do hit this kind of uncanny valley, right? You do, and it's very cost prohibitive as well. And furthermore, you can't really beat just shooting on location sometimes. You know, you have all the scope in the world, the lighting is gorgeous, the actors are interacting with real world environments. And so what we did is we used kind of practical filming as the foundation for how we shoot these things, and then accentuate it for scenes in post with our amazing VFX team. Or, you know, there are some worlds that we have to create more on, but we kind of had to place our bets that way, right? And I think the way that we most managed, and Vincenzo most managed, to make things look so realistic was by really nailing that hybrid technology. An interesting piece of behind the scenes gossip was, I'm not sure this is gossip, that sounds much more salacious than what I'm about to offer, but so in the Koids, you know how they have people's faces like within them, and they're kind of made of different compartments, and you can see you know, faces moving and interacting within them. So the team spent a lot of time on that design, you know, VFX and the practical effects of that, and finally came up with this idea that I thought was really novel and really amazing, and allowed you to see human facial movements, but within a completely artificial body in a very new way. So after spending countless man hours on this with countless people, after we wrapped, Jay Worth, our VFX guru, he did one of those things where he talked to the AI that's drawing things. What's it calling? I'm having like a brain melt where you give them adjectives and the AI draws whatever you're describing.
The generative AI. Like
Exactly.
Dolly,
And
yes.
so that was the exercise we gave them, and they came up with something that looked almost exactly like the coids that we designed. So it's just this weird thing where you're seeing how AI creativity and human creativity kind of dovetailed in this one instance.
Yeah. Vincenzo, how's it going? You still on the phone with Bill? Looks like he's still on the phone with Bill.
Oh, he's having a break.
Okay, Chloë, I'm going to come back to you because I know you only have a few more minutes.
No problem.
Are we? Are there any? I mean, without giving spoilers, is there anything you're particularly excited for us to learn in the finale, in the season finale?
Yeah, I'm not going to give much away, but I think that the conclusion that Flynn comes to is one that I think even surprised me when I read it. It is like, from a fan perspective, it's super exciting, and it makes me so jazzed for season two, which I really hope we have the opportunity to do, because there's just so much that we can dive into. And you're going to understand why, because when you see episode 8, you're going to be like, oh my dear Lord. But she just really makes decisions that are really valiant and really powerful, and are decisions that I don't know that most people would have the gumption or the the bravery to make those decisions. And I'm just constantly amazed by Flynn, and she's just such a wonderful character to be able to play and watch. So I think people are going to be so pleasantly surprised with that episode 8.
And are there any big mysteries that might have to wait for a second season?
Oh my gosh, I think there's a few. I think there's I mean, Lisa, you can probably add a little bit of Easter eggs to it, but I think there's a bunch of ins that can go in so many directions in season 2.
I mean, I'm excited now that I know the full extent of Chloe's ass-kicking prowess. Having seen her training, I mean, you shouldn't have let me see that, Chloë. Like, you're supposed to call for a stunt double. Don't let me know what you can do.
Wait, are these the videos that I've seen on Twitter of
Yeah.
Chloë like decking someone and throwing them over her shoulder?
It's incredible. I have more of those. I have so many of those videos, and I was like, what's the insurance situation with having Chloe do things? Like, are we okay here? But she's just so damn good. So Chloe, keep going with the martial arts. We're gonna need more of that. I'm liking some of this romantic tension going on. I think we're gonna need, some more of that. That's who wouldn't want to date Flynn? So, and the bad guys are they're always demons, lots of demons, three-dimensional chess demons in many, many timelines. So I think we're in for a wild ride.
All right. Well, we're still hopefully trying to get William on the call. Meanwhile, are there any morals of the story for either of you? I'm actually going to quote Bill again, since I feel like I'm bringing him onto the call by quoting things that he's written 8 years ago. But he said to an interviewer when the book was published, he said that one of the key lessons that he was trying to get across in the book was that culturally we tend to assume, he said, quotes, the inhabitants of the past are hicks and rubes, and the inhabitants of the future are effete, overcomplicated beings with big brains and weak figures. And we always think of ourselves in the present as the cream of creation. So that was like his moral of the book. And his, like, what he was doing in the book was taking the hicks and rubes of the past, meaning the 2030s, and showing them to be actually really sophisticated, and taking like these effete, overcomplicated future beings with big brains and weak figures, and showing them to actually like really scheming and conniving. So he was flipping that script. But I don't know, what for either of you, what are some morals of the story?
Chloe, I'll let you go first.
Okay. What are some morals of the story? I mean, I think there's a lot of morals within the story. I think one, I would say that I think Flynn is a very morally sound character. She's someone who, like I said earlier, really knows her true north, and I think for her, family matters above all, and she really hates when the man, in parentheses, is taking advantage of the little person. And I think that's something that's really strong in Flynn's character, is that she is always fighting for the underdog, because ultimately they are underdogs in this world. You know, they're having to pay X amount of money per pill of Tamazine just so their mom can survive another day. You know, and they have all these things financially against them in their world and in their life, and they're just trying to overcome those obstacles every single day. And you know, when she does end up getting this, you know, this newfound power that she's gaining by going to the future and getting this information, and obviously now with the bacteria that's coded in her brain, which is, you know, an incredible amount of information, you know, how is she going to be able to still keep that moral compass, whilst, you know, kind of having the ability to make any decision she wants? So I don't know. I think there's a lot of morals in this story, but what do you think, Lisa?
No, you're an immoral no, just kidding. I think, you know, I think
I'm
that,
amoral, but Flynn's moral.
I mean, I think some of the most touching, real, and, you know, everybody's moral in abstract, right? It's like, and then in Flynn's world, you see on a daily level what real morality is, right? You
Right.
see Burton sacrificing his pain meds for his mother, you know, and you see Flynne doing everything she can, sacrificing her own health and well-being to try to get medication for her mom. You know, you see people doing heroic things, as heroic in those little gestures as the giant fight scenes, just so that they can help those that they love. And I think that looking at heroism not as this macro thing over the sweep of history, but as the individual gestures that individual regular humans make on a daily basis, despite all the things going against them to help each other, like that's the very definition of morality. And I think that's why I love Flynne and her group of cohorts so much. But, you know, I think there's another lesson that William Gibson is showing us on a sort of philosophical level in this. And it's kind of, you know, in so many movies, I mean, I love these movies, but Armageddon comes in the form of like a meteor or like a giant storm or aliens attacking, right? And it's like, that's the moment of truth where the world is tested and everything irrevocably turns. And in Gibson's world, you have the jackpot. And the jackpot isn't one singular event that changes everything. It is the slow incremental creep of a million different things, right? It's disease, it's corruption, it's the environment, you know? And when you think about that in conjunction with the very premise of this book, right, which is, you know, everybody knows about the butterfly effect, right? If you go back in time and change one little thing, then everything will be different in the future. But we are right now back in time. Those little things them, right? And it's not a meteor that's going to come. It's the culmination of those tiny little choices. And so I think what the novel shows us is in watching Flynne and her family and friends make these bold, moral, and brave choices, it's also kind of saying, look, this is a mirror to you, to everyone. Like, you know, the past is now. Like, this is where we do the thing that causes the butterfly effect that averts disaster. We're all in it. And we all have this simple power to make those changes. And to me, that's an incredibly uplifting message. And that kind of message in sci-fi, especially at this time in history, especially, I think is really crucial.
Yeah, that's a really great takeaway. I want to ask one last question to Chloë, and this is kind of zooming back in a little bit, but there's some really interesting moments of conflict between Flynne and Burton in the show.
Yeah.
Where, and I'm wondering how do you know, why do you think that is? Why are they such? Why do they have such frictions? Do they want fundamentally different things, or is it just some childhood rivalry? Is it the fact that she is actually a better gamer than he is, and he feels threatened? You know, what's going on there?
I mean, I think, you know, quite frankly, I do think a lot of it is just sibling bickering. You know, it just is a simple kind of bickering back and forth. Because at the end of the day, and I think you'll really see it in episode 8. But you know, she loves Burton, and she ultimately wants to protect Burton, but she also doesn't feel quite seen by Burton. I think that is where we kind of get into that situation. We were talking about how she feels just being in future London, is that she is the woman that she wants to be in future London, whereas with her brother, she might feel infantilized. You know what I mean? Like he is constantly treating her like little Flynn, like his little sister, when he's, right before she has this scene, I think it's in episode 4, I want to say, but she says to him, like, I was here, you chose to go off to the war, but I had to stay here, and I took care of Mom, and I was here when Dad died, and I was the one that had to make these decisions without you, and I was the woman who had to make these decisions, and I'm not a little kid anymore. And I think she repeats that throughout the season, and almost every little altercation they get into. And I think it's just a situation of where he needs to trust and respect her, but also I do think she needs to trust and respect her brother. So, I think they're just a little bit at odds. She feels a little bit, underappreciated. And he feels like he was, a part of a really important unit in the war and probably made really important decisions. And he's come back home and he thinks he needs to have that same authority like he might have within like the military complex. Whereas at home, you don't have that. It's not, there is no checks and balances like that. It's emotional. It's not so, organized. So I think, I think ultimately, the decision she makes in episode 8, I think is going to honestly add fuel to the fire of their disagreements in some ways. And I think you'll really see that. And again, I'm interested to see what happens in season 2, because I think if they were already kind of bickering before, this is going to create a pretty deep divide for them where, I'll be interested to see how they navigate through that going forward.
Thank you. Well, Chloë, I know that you probably have to leave us, but we have William Gibson.
Yes.
Mr. Gibson, welcome. Can you hear us?
Hello?
Hello, we have you.
Oh, amazing.
So glad you've been able to join. We only have a few minutes left, but there are so many questions that I want to ask you. So
well, I apologize for my complete lack of technical boy factor.
we forgive you because you wrote The Peripheral. It's okay. We'll let you get away with it. So I'm going to ask you some of the questions that I wanted to ask earlier on when we were discussing the show and the world building. Like, what was most surprising or interesting to you about the way that the worlds of The Peripheral got translated onto the screen?
Oh, I was assuming that from having very little, virtually no knowledge of how one writes for this form, I had assumed that it would the show would drift away from the novel and become something else. But then what I got was as Vincenzo had first said to me, a stub of the book. They could, I got the two forms coexisting in my head. I don't know if that works for other people who've read the book, but it's incredibly pleasant in an unexpected way, and it's given me hope for the whole form of adapting fiction. For the whole business of adapting fiction, I now look at with considerably greater respect.
Lisa Vincenzo, you should be able to, that should make you feel good. That's a great thing for a writer to be able to say about filmmakers. Chloë, I know you have to leave.
By the way, was just my attempt to be friends with William Gibson. So, Bill, I'm moving to Canada. It's been a very long.
I want everyone to get there. I don't want to say anything. I want to hear Chloë and Bill.
Chloë, I know you have to leave. Do you want to say something?
I wanted to say hi to you, Bill. I know we haven't met yet, but I feel so lucky and so honored to be able to bring, your Flynn to life, and I'm such a big fan of yours, and we've like kind of corresponded on Twitter a little bit, but I just want to say it's wonderful to hear your voice and to be honest with you.
Thank you so much. I mean, really, I'll never be able to thank you enough for what you've done with the character and through that for the entire series. It's just from the 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 first instant of you being on screen, it just worked for me, and I was just so amazed, and I'm so grateful to you for that.
Well, that is the highest praise I could ever wish for. This is a character so dear to my heart, and I think you just created such a incredibly massive world and intricacies of the characters. We all just, I don't know, we had so much to chew on, I think, as actors, and we felt really, really lucky for that. So thank you. I am at the airport.
Well.
I'm about to get out of the car to go to Brazil to talk more about this show, but I just want to say thank you guys so much for having me on today. And thank you, Bill, for being on here too.
I'll be seeing you in
Thank you.
Brazil, Chloe.
Yeah, see you, Lisa, in like 12 hours.
Thank you, Chloe. Thank you.
Hi, guys. Thank you.
Well, Bill, I want to come back to you again because I read another interview with you from when the book was published, and you said, when I was just beginning, I just had this girl walking down a hill to go see her brother who lived in a house trailer. I didn't really have anything else at all, and I didn't know when it was. It was at the stage when I feel like characters are kind of auditioning, and sometimes they get the role and sometimes they don't.
Yeah.
So how did you get from that? Is that how you normally work? How do you get from that very vague idea to such fully formed characters?
Well, in this case, it was I'll tell you what happened. When I had the nameless girl walking down the hill to her brother's house trailer, I had the idea that she lived in some this near future America, and but I also had the idea that I wanted her to be in touch with another realm with a much higher level of technology. And what all I could think of that would be a place where only very wealthy Americans lived, and that for her that would be like the future. So I thought, okay, we'll do Miami. I just sort of pulled it out of the hat of American places. And it wasn't really working for me. And then I happened to find myself a few weeks after that in London with my friend Nick Harkaway in his garden in Hampstead. And he was explaining to me what the city of London is and how it operates and its various shady sides is something I had no understanding of whatever. And having enjoyed that and encouraged him and asked him lots of questions, I went back to the hotel, woke up the next morning, and the basis of the book was there. Flynn was going to be in touch with the future of London. And I may not have even known that her name was Flynn at that point, but I owe it all to Nick and his explanation of the city.
Fun fact: Nick and I went to the same school, just 1 year apart.
Oh.
I know Lisa has a question for you. Lisa, what do you want to say to Bill?
So we have a text chain, and he asked if I had any questions for you, Bill. And my question was, A, will you be my best friend?
Oh, yes.
And B, and this is for Vincenzo too, as the director. So if we can get you to cameo, would you want to cameo as a role in future London or Clanton?
Oh, I would. I think Clanton. Yeah, Clanton.
You want to be on the good guy side or the bad? You're going to be hanging out with Corbell or hanging out with Flynn?
Oh, well, it would. What would I be? I think, sort of just some some guy sitting at the bar in Jimmy's.
Nice.
Watching it all go down.
Power to make this happen, Vincenzo. We can do this.
Did you just give away a little spoiler, Lisa? Is Corbell not really dead yet?
I'm just going up from today's thing, and also don't talk anymore, Gideon. I didn't say anything. No. So here's my other question. So Vincenzo and I, when we looked at this, we find it, I think, very optimistic. We talk about how it's not dystopian at all, and that, for me, this book was very hopeful. I saw a lot of myself or who I want to be in Flynne, and for sci-fi, it felt like it was about the power to change things and the power to change the future, and it was a very moral tale. And I've been working on some dystopian fiction lately, but would you consider this an optimistic tale of the future? And do you consider yourself optimistic about the future?
That is a great question, because it's exactly the one that I wanted to ask Bill. So, Bill, go ahead.
Oh, I think that and I think this has been true of my work since I started writing fiction. I think that my work actually tries, and has always tried, to be somewhat optimistic. I'd like to give that to the reader. In this case, I can't really say that I'm able to give that to myself. The like Wilf world, as I called it when I was writing the book, is only able to exist because there's been in the middle of all the bad stuff that's happened, there's been a lot of technology, a kind of half-assed singularity, as I've always thought of it. And that has enabled humanity to temporarily fix global warming and things like that. And but people are left in Wilf world, and 80% of Earth's human population has died off over a relatively short period of time, and that doesn't feel unlikely at all to me. But the being saved by the half-assed singularity does feel a bit like wishful thinking, I'm afraid.
There are so many other questions I want to ask all of you, but Bill and Lisa, you're just going to have to become best friends with Bill and then invite me to dinner. I want to really thank all of you, Lisa, Vincenzo for doing tech support, Bill for sticking through it and coming on, Chloe who's on a plane, everybody who worked on The Peripheral. It's an amazing show. I can't wait for season 2. I hope it happens. And I can't wait for the season finale on Friday, and I will be bereft after it screens.
Indeed.
Thank you so much, Gideon.
Yeah, it's been a blast.
It has. Thanks a lot. Have a good rest of your day,
Thank
everybody.
you.
Thank you,
Bye-bye.